so now we're going to do a tie-dye sample. So I'm going to demonstrate a few different techniques on these pieces of fabric, and you'll do one sample for your books, and then you can decide what sort of technique you will want to do for your bag if you want to do tie-dye. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wet the sample. Okay, so it's really important that you wet the sample so that the dye is able to be absorbed by the fabric a lot easier. So we're just going to wet it and wring it out so it's damp. And then we can tie up our sample. So the first one I'm going to do is just a simple stripe. Okay, so I'm just going to fold it or roll it into a strip. Okay, now I'm going to get rubber bands and I'm just going to wrap the rubber bands around it at different sections. So wherever the rubber band is where the fabric is still going to be white. Okay, wherever the rubber bands aren't is where you're going to place your color. Okay, so we're just going to wrap this around and then we'll do one more. One more towards the end here. So you're just sort of putting it around the fabric, twisting it, and then putting it around again, twisting it until you don't have any more rubber band to go around. Okay, so that's our sample. I'm just going to move these pieces. So that's our sample, and we'll color it at the end. So that would create stripes. So wherever the rubber bands are, it's going to create stripes. You could do it on a diagonal as well, across the fabric like this, and roll it or fold it, whichever way you want to do it, across the fabric, and that would create diagonals. If you go this way and tie it across, you'll have stripes that way, or you can do it the other way and get stripes the other way. Now the next one we're going to do is the target. So I'm just going to place this fabric in the water and then wring it out so it's just damp. And then we're going to do the target. So we lay it flat and then we pick it up from the center and you sort of push all the fabric down in the one direction, and then we wrap the rubber bands around at intervals similar to the stripes. So you can just pick one of these samples to recreate with your own colors. Okay, so that's our target. We'll color them all at the end. The next one is the spiral. So we will wet this fabric, wring it out. And then with the spiral, we need to use scissors or some sort of pointed object to create the spiral. So what I do is I just open the scissors a little bit, being careful not to pinch them and snip your fabric. You're just going to twist it. So you sort of just twist it and you push all the fabric down as you go, so it gets included into the design, and you just create that spiral. So if you look at the bottom, you've got that beautiful spiral on the bottom. And then you're going to wrap across the design. So the tighter your rubber bands are as well, the longer you're going to have to leave it in there, or the less dye is going to be able to get in. So you don't want to keep it, you don't want to make it too tight, but you don't want to make it too loose either. So fairly tight, but you should still be able to move the fabric a bit. Okay, so that's our spiral. And then second last one is our circles. So just random circles. So we wet the fabric and then we can just pick it up at different points and wrap one rubber band around that point. Okay, and the more fabric, so then we can lay it back out. If you pick up more fabric and push it down and tie your rubber band down further, that will create a bigger circle. Okay, so remember, wherever you tie your rubber bands is going to be white. probably one more. So it makes it look a bit weird and you can't really see what it's going to look like, but you'll have 4 circles on there. Okay, so I'm just going to lay that flat on there. Design we're going to do, the last technique we're going to do is the scrunch technique. So you're just going to wring out your fabric, and then you've got your one piece of fabric and you're just going to scrunch it up however you like, and then we're going to wrap rubber bands around it. So probably 2 or 3 rubber bands, because this is such a small piece of fabric. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so that's the scrunch method. So now we are going to coat all of our designs with our dies, okay? Now it's really important that you put it onto into a tray and then on a rack. If it's not on a rack, it'll sit in the die and then it'll absorb whatever color dye is in the bottom, which is normally brown because it's a mixture of all different dyes. So we're just gonna place them on there. Just make sure they're not gonna fall through the cracks of the rack. And then we are going to just sort of put a little bit of dye wherever we think the color goes, okay? So I've got blue, pink, purple, red, and yellow. You might have different colors. Sometimes we have buckets at school too, or buckets of dye, which you just dip your sample into, okay? So I'm just gonna put a little bit of dye. You just need to make sure that it's gonna soak through, and try not to get too much on the tray because it's just wasting the dye. Okay, so it's a good idea to just put the nozzle straight onto the fabric and sort of push it into the fabric as you do it, and that eliminates a lot of dye going onto the tray. So what I'm going to do is just turn it over and do it on the other side. Okay, so you're just sort of squeezing it a little bit, and you can just sort of drip it everywhere if you wanted to. And you don't have to use all the colors, you could just use 2 or 1. So I'm just arranging it however I think will look good. And you got to think about your color combinations too. And what sort of colors go together and what sort of colors create different colors. So if you combine red and blue, it's going to make purple. And remember, the colors are actually going to wash out a little bit too when we run them underwater. And then we're just going to leave them to sit and sort of dry, and then we'll wash them out. So they probably need to sit for 24 hours just to soak up all the dye, and then we can take the rubber bands off and wash them.